The dilemma of the runaway trolley is not merely a hypothetical exercise in logic. It is a profound reflection of the harsh realities we face when resources are limited and tragedy is unavoidable. When we are presented with the choice between losing 5 lives or 1, the math seems cold, yet it is undeniably compelling. Most people, when forced to look at the situation without the interference of emotional proximity, intuitively recognize that 5 lives possess a greater aggregate value than 1. This is not about devaluing the individual, but about recognizing the sheer weight of 5 distinct futures, 5 sets of potential contributions, and 5 circles of loved ones that would be irrevocably shattered. By choosing to steer the trolley, we are not expressing a desire for harm. We are making the only responsible decision available in an impossible moment. To stand by and allow 5 deaths to occur when one could have prevented them is to ignore the moral gravity of our own agency. When we hold the power to intervene, our inaction becomes a choice in itself, and a decision to do nothing is often more harmful than the difficult decision to act. This initial reaction, to save the many, is rooted in the fundamental recognition that the goal of any ethical system must be to minimize suffering and maximize well-being. If we accept that human life has intrinsic worth, then it follows that a larger collection of those lives represents a more significant outcome for society. This is the cornerstone of a perspective that values the health of the community over the preservation of an abstract status quo. When we look at the trolley driver, we see a person thrust into a situation where the ideal outcome, saving everyone, is no longer possible. In such a vacuum of perfect options, the only remaining standard is the reduction of total loss. This is not a callous calculation, it is a compassionate one. To sacrifice the 1 is to prioritize the survival of the 5, and that prioritization is the essence of responsible decision-making. We must grapple with the fact that moral purity is often a luxury we cannot afford when the clock is ticking and lives are hanging in the balance. The comparison to heroic acts, such as the passengers on 9/11, reinforces this idea that we already possess a cultural and moral blueprint for this kind of trade-off. We do not look at those individuals and see murderers. We see people who recognize that the total cost of their inaction would be catastrophic. Their willingness to accept a smaller, albeit tragic, loss to prevent a total destruction is widely regarded as the ultimate expression of moral courage. This proves that when the stakes are high enough, our society intuitively shifts toward a framework that prioritizes the collective survival. We recognize that the alternative, allowing a greater number of people to perish, is a far worse outcome. It is a failure of leadership and a failure of empathy to pretend that all outcomes are equal, or that we are somehow absolved of responsibility if we simply refuse to make a choice. We are always choosing, and the most defensible choice is the one that leaves the world with more people standing at the end of the day. When we consider the counterarguments, we often find they are rooted in a desire to keep our own hands clean, rather than a genuine concern for the outcome. The person who refuses to pull the lever is effectively prioritizing their own moral comfort over the lives of 5 people. While they might feel that their hands remain unstained by the act of killing, they have effectively allowed the deaths of 5 individuals to occur through their refusal to act. This is a form of moral narcissism. It values the integrity of one's own conscience above the actual survival of others. If we could change the outcome, and we choose not to because we are afraid of the burden of the decision, we are not being moral, we are being self-absorbed. The world is a complex place where clear-cut victories are rare, and the ability to accept the weight of a difficult decision for the greater good is a mark of maturity. We must move beyond the fear of making mistakes and focus instead on the reality of the consequences we leave behind. Some argue that pushing a person onto the tracks is a fundamentally different act than pulling a lever, citing the intimacy of the physical contact. However, from the perspective of results, the nature of the act is secondary to the final outcome. Whether one uses a lever, a button, or a push, the result is the same. 1 life is sacrificed to ensure 5 remain. To focus on the how rather than the why is to miss the forest for the trees. If we are truly committed to a world with less suffering, the method of intervention is far less important than the effectiveness of the intervention. We often create elaborate moral distinctions to shield ourselves from the gravity of our choices, but these distinctions crumble under the weight of reality. When 6 people are at risk, and we can only save 5, the decision should be guided by the numbers. Any other approach risks letting our personal squeamishness dictate the outcome of someone else's life, which is a moral failure of the highest order. The scenario of the doctor, who must decide between saving 1 severely injured person or 5 moderately injured ones, highlights the same necessity for pragmatic triage. In an emergency room, doctors are not afforded the luxury of emotional attachment. They are tasked with using their limited resources to achieve the best possible result. If a doctor spent all their time on the patient with the least chance of survival while 5 others died, they would be seen as having neglected their duty. This is because we implicitly understand that the role of the professional is to serve the greatest number of people effectively. This is not a cold, mechanical process. It is a duty of care that acknowledges the finite nature of our resources. We expect our systems and our leaders to operate with the same sense of prioritization, ensuring that the greatest benefit is achieved for the largest number of people. It is the only way to manage a world that is often cruel and indifferent. Critiques of this approach often lean on the fear that this logic justifies totalitarianism or genocide, yet this is a fundamental mischaracterization. There is a profound difference between a desperate, reactive choice in an emergency and a policy designed to dehumanize or destroy. The trolley problem is a singular, isolated event where one life is lost to save five. It is not an agenda of elimination, but a response to a tragic crisis. To equate the two is to ignore the context that defines morality. We are not talking about systemic oppression or the removal of undesirables. We are talking about human beings in a literal runaway situation. By muddying the waters with comparisons to historical atrocities, we avoid the hard work of thinking through the specific, immediate dilemma at hand. This is a common tactic to avoid facing the reality that sometimes, in the most limited of circumstances, the best we can do is choose the lesser of two evils. The resistance to this way of thinking is often internal. It is uncomfortable to admit that human life can be weighed, even in the most tragic circumstances. We want to believe that every life is infinite, that every individual is irreplaceable, and that no trade-offs are possible. But this is a fantasy that does not hold up in the face of reality. If we truly valued every life as an absolute, we would never be able to justify any action that puts anyone at risk. Yet we make these calculations every day, in how we fund healthcare, how we design roads, and how we manage emergency response. We are already utilitarians in practice. The goal now is to acknowledge it openly and refine our ability to make these choices with as much wisdom as possible. By accepting this responsibility, we become more capable of navigating a world that rarely presents us with perfect, painless solutions. The apprehension about getting involved in the lives of others, like the fat man on the bridge, is understandable but ultimately flawed. It suggests that there is a neutral position, as if standing by and doing nothing is a passive act that carries no weight. But silence is an answer. Inaction is a policy. By choosing to stay on the sidelines, the bystander is deciding that it is more important to avoid responsibility than to prevent a mass death. Is that really a position of moral superiority? It seems more like a way to keep one's hands clean while the world burns. If we are to be true stewards of our shared humanity, we must be willing to step into the fray, to make the hard calls, and to accept the burden of our decisions. The fear of being wrong should not paralyze us into being useless. The most meaningful way to honor human life is to ensure as much of it continues as possible. We must also challenge the idea that there is something inherently wrong with being the one who makes the difficult call. We often look at those who take charge as if they are somehow tainted by the necessity of their actions, but in many cases they are the ones doing the work of heroes. To take the weight of a decision upon oneself so that others might live is a form of sacrifice. It is far easier to be the person who says, "I won't participate," and then watches as others suffer. That is not moral purity, that is evasion. The person who pulls the lever is the one who accepts the burden of the tragedy so that it does not fall on the five who would have died. We should be teaching our citizens to have the courage to make these calls, rather than training them to be bystanders who prioritize their own innocence over the lives of their neighbors. This brings us to the importance of institutionalizing these choices. In a democratic society, we cannot rely on the intuition of individuals to make these calculations in the heat of the moment. We need frameworks and policies that guide us toward the most beneficial outcomes. Whether it is in public health, resource allocation, or infrastructure planning, the goal should always be to maximize the well-being of the population. This does not mean that the individual is forgotten. It means that the needs of the individual are balanced within the context of the greater good. This is the only way to manage a society that is diverse, large, and filled with competing interests. We must have the courage to debate these principles and then codify them into the rules that govern our lives, so that we aren't constantly reinventing the wheel in every crisis. The anxiety that this approach creates is in many ways the point. It is supposed to feel heavy. It is supposed to be difficult. If we ever reach a point where we can make these decisions without a sense of hesitation or gravity, then we have truly lost our humanity. The restlessness of reason, as described by the philosophers, is exactly what keeps us grounded. It prevents us from becoming heartless technicians of death, and forces us to constantly engage with the moral implications of our actions. We should embrace this discomfort. We should use it to fuel our debates, to sharpen our arguments, and to hold ourselves to a higher standard of accountability. The fact that these questions have remained unsettled for centuries is not a sign of our failure, it is a sign of their enduring importance. They are the questions that define us. Ultimately, the goal of this analytical perspective is not to provide easy answers, but to provide a framework for navigating an uncertain world. We are not looking for a correct answer that will never be questioned again. We are looking for a way to act that is defensible, logical, and deeply rooted in a concern for human flourishing. We want to build a society where we can justify our decisions, not just to ourselves but to one another. This requires a level of transparency and a willingness to engage in the hard work of moral reasoning. It is not enough to simply follow our gut instincts. We must be able to articulate why our choices are the right ones and be prepared to defend them against challenge. This is the mark of a mature, functioning society that is capable of growth. The role of technology and innovation in this conversation cannot be ignored. As we move toward a future where algorithms and autonomous systems will be making some of these decisions, the need for a clear, principled framework becomes even more urgent. We cannot program a machine to be moral if we have not clearly defined what that means for ourselves. We need to be able to tell our machines how to prioritize, how to value, and how to operate in the face of inevitable trade-offs. This is why these conversations are more relevant than ever. We are moving toward a future where our ethical choices will be embedded in our technology, and we must ensure that those choices reflect the values we hold most dear. We cannot afford to leave these questions to chance or to the whims of programmers. We must be the ones who provide the moral direction. Consider the implications of a self-driving car facing a trolley-style scenario. We are already talking about the algorithms of morality that will govern these vehicles. If we cannot decide how to approach the trolley problem, how can we possibly expect to design safe and ethical autonomous systems? We are effectively forcing ourselves to answer these philosophical questions as a matter of engineering. This is a fascinating turn of events. We are no longer debating these issues in the abstract. We are debating them in the concrete reality of our daily lives and the tools we use to navigate them. This adds a layer of urgency to our philosophical inquiries, forcing us to move beyond skepticism and into the realm of practical, applied ethics. We are building the future, and we must do so with our eyes wide open. This is not a reason to be afraid. This is a reason to be engaged. The fact that we have the power to shape the future of these systems and these policies is an incredible opportunity. We are not just subjects of a moral universe, we are creators of it. We have the ability to determine the rules, to test them, and to refine them as we learn more about the world and our place in it. This is an exciting, albeit sobering task. We are tasked with building a world that is more just, more efficient, and more humane than the one we inherited. This is the work of a lifetime, and it is a work that belongs to all of us. We should welcome the challenge, knowing that the work we do today will set the stage for the generations that follow. The historical perspective is invaluable here. By looking at how these questions have been debated throughout history, we see that we are not the first to struggle with them. We are part of a long line of thinkers who have been trying to make sense of our responsibilities to one another. We can learn from their successes and their failures. We can use their insights to build a more robust framework for our own time. We do not need to start from scratch. We have a rich intellectual tradition to draw upon, and we have the tools of modern analysis to apply those ideas to our contemporary challenges. This is the great advantage of being a student of history and philosophy. We are standing on the shoulders of giants, and we have the potential to see further than they ever could. As we move forward, we must remain committed to the idea that there is no perfect world. There will always be trade-offs, there will always be losses, there will always be difficult choices, but this is not a cause for despair. It is a cause for focus. We must concentrate our efforts on building systems that minimize harm and maximize the good. We must be honest about the costs, and we must be compassionate in our responses. We must strive to be better today than we were yesterday, and we must never stop questioning our own assumptions. This is the only way to make progress. It is the only way to ensure that we are doing the best we can in a world that is inherently uncertain. Ultimately, the essence of a truly ethical life is the willingness to accept responsibility for the impact we have on the world. This means owning our decisions, even when they are painful. It means acknowledging the complexity of our choices, and it means being willing to change our minds when new information comes to light. It means recognizing that we are all connected, and that the choices we make for ourselves have ripple effects that touch the lives of others. We are all part of a larger community, and our success is tied to the success of our fellow humans. By acting in a way that promotes the greatest good for the greatest number, we are not just solving a riddle, we are fulfilling our duty to our common future. In conclusion, the trolley problem serves as the perfect litmus test for our values and our priorities. It strips away the distractions and forces us to look at the heart of our moral reasoning. It challenges us to move beyond our prejudices and our comfort zones. It pushes us to define what we mean by justice and to apply that definition in the most difficult of circumstances. Whether we are dealing with medical emergencies, self-driving cars, or public policy, the lesson is the same: our actions matter, our choices have consequences, and our responsibility is to act in a way that preserves the most life and minimizes the most suffering. This is a simple goal, but it is one that will take all of our intellect, our courage, and our compassion to achieve. Let us commit to this work with the seriousness and the dedication it deserves. When we shift from the abstract to the concrete, we begin to see that moral reasoning is not a luxury. It is a necessity for the survival and progress of any organized society. Every public policy, from healthcare reform to environmental regulations, is essentially a massive, real-world application of the trolley problem. We are always asking ourselves, how can we allocate these limited resources in a way that saves the most people or improves the most lives? We do this in hospitals, in legislatures, and in city councils. To deny that we are making these calculations is to hide from the reality of governance. We must be transparent about the math. If we are allocating funds for cancer research rather than heart disease, we are making a trade-off. If we prioritize infrastructure in one area over another, we are making a trade-off. These are not immoral acts, they are the unavoidable realities of finite existence. The goal is not to avoid the trade-off, but to make it as fair and as effective as possible. Consider the role of the state in providing basic services. There is no such thing as an infinite budget. Every dollar spent on education is a dollar not spent on defense, or on public safety, or on social programs. We are constantly balancing these competing needs, and our choices reveal our priorities. If we decide that education is the most effective way to secure a better future for the greatest number of people, we are making a decision that will have long-term positive consequences. This is a utilitarian approach, and it is the only one that makes sense when we are trying to manage the needs of millions of people. We cannot make decisions based on the feelings of an individual. We must look at the impact on the community. This is the essence of responsible leadership, and it is the only way to ensure that our society remains stable, prosperous, and just. The critics of this approach often point to the rights of the individual as if they exist in a vacuum, independent of the community. But the reality is that rights are only meaningful within a society that respects and protects them. If we allow the needs of the individual to consistently override the needs of the many, the society will eventually collapse, and then no one will have any rights at all. There must be a balance. We recognize the importance of the individual, but we also recognize that the individual is part of a larger whole. We must protect the rights of the individual as much as possible, but we must be prepared to limit those rights when they come into direct conflict with the survival and the well-being of the majority. This is not a violation of rights, it is a recognition of the collective obligation we have to one another. We should also be wary of the idea that we can somehow optimize our way out of moral dilemmas. Technology can help us manage resources, but it cannot solve the fundamental questions of value. We still have to decide what is better. Is it better to have a society that is highly efficient but lacks empathy? Is it better to have a society that is deeply compassionate but less efficient? These are questions that can only be answered through ongoing, robust debate. We must keep these conversations in the public square, and we must ensure that all voices are heard. We cannot leave the definition of the good to a small group of technocrats. It is a decision that belongs to everyone, and it is a decision that should be revisited and updated as our society evolves. The importance of this ongoing debate cannot be overstated. We are constantly learning new things about the world, and our understanding of what is fair and what is just must change accordingly. We are not bound by the traditions of the past, nor are we captive to the dogmas of the present. We have the capacity for growth, and we have the responsibility to use that capacity to build a better future. This requires us to be open to new ideas, to listen to those who hold different views, and to be willing to admit when we are wrong. This is the mark of an intellectually honest society. It is not always comfortable, but it is the only way to achieve progress. We should also remember that our emotions play a role in our moral reasoning, even if we try to be objective. We feel empathy for those who are suffering, and that empathy is a valuable resource. It motivates us to take action and to care for those in need. But we must be careful not to let our emotions cloud our judgment. We must be able to balance our empathy with our reason. We must be able to feel the pain of others without losing sight of the broader picture. This is the challenge of living an ethical life in a complex world. We must be both passionate and principled, both emotional and analytical. The process of learning to think in this way is a personal journey. We all start with our own biases, our own upbringing, and our own personal experiences. It is only by questioning these things, by testing them against the realities of the world, that we can develop a truly robust moral perspective. This is a lifelong process. We will never finish our moral education. We will always be learning, always growing, and always refining our understanding of what it means to be a good person. This is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of engagement. It is a sign that we are truly alive. Think about the way we handle crises in our own lives. We are often forced to choose between two paths, both of which have their own drawbacks. We weigh the pros and the cons, we consider the impact on ourselves and those we love, and we make the best decision we can. This is a microcosm of the larger societal decisions we have been discussing. We are all dealing with the same basic human condition. We have limited time, limited energy, and limited resources, and we are trying to make the best of what we have. This is why we can all relate to these trolley dilemmas. They are not just intellectual puzzles, they are reflections of our own lived experiences. The value of this approach is that it provides a way to move forward without being paralyzed by indecision. When we are faced with a difficult choice, we can use our analytical framework to clarify the options and to identify the path that leads to the best possible outcome. This doesn't mean the choice will be easy or that we won't feel the weight of it, but it does mean we can act with confidence and clarity. We can know that we have done our best and that we have acted in a way that is consistent with our values. This is a source of strength and it is a source of peace. Ultimately, we are all in this together. The trolley track is not just an image, it is a metaphor for our shared existence. We are all riding on this track and we are all facing the same uncertainties. The choices we make impact each other in ways we can't always predict. This is why it is so important to foster a culture of cooperation and mutual respect. We must be able to trust each other, to rely on each other, and to work together to solve the problems that we face. This is the only way to build a future that is worth living in. We must also be careful to avoid the trap of cynicism. It is easy to look at the world and see only the problems, the corruption, and the suffering. It is easy to feel that nothing can change and that our efforts don't really matter. But this is a defeatist attitude. Change is possible, progress is happening. People are working every day to make the world a better place and their efforts are having a real impact. We need to focus on these stories of hope and progress, and we need to be part of that change. We need to be the ones who are actively working to build a better future. The role of education is key here. We need to teach our children how to think, not just what to think. We need to equip them with the tools of critical analysis and the habit of moral reflection. We need to help them understand that their choices matter and that they have the power to make a positive impact on the world. This is the most important investment we can make in our future. If we can raise a generation that is capable of thoughtful, reasoned, and compassionate decision-making, then we will have done our duty. Consider the power of a single individual who decides to take responsibility. One person who decides to stand up for what is right, who chooses to act in a way that promotes the common good, can have a profound impact on their community. They can inspire others, they can lead by example, and they can create a movement for change. This is the power of the individual. We should never underestimate it. We all have the potential to be that person. We all have the potential to make a difference. The future is not something that happens to us, it is something we create. Every day we are making decisions that shape the world we live in. We are setting the tone, we are establishing the norms, and we are building the structures that will determine our future. This is a profound responsibility, and we must treat it with the seriousness it deserves. We must act with purpose, we must act with care, and we must act with a deep commitment to the well-being of all people. We have the tools we need to make progress. We have the intelligence, we have the resources, and we have the capacity for cooperation. The only thing missing is the will to act. We must choose to prioritize the common good. We must choose to look past our own narrow interests and work toward a future that is better for everyone. This is the great challenge of our time, and it is a challenge we can meet. The process of building a better world is long and difficult, but it is worth it. It is the only way to create a world that is truly worthy of our potential. It is the only way to ensure that we are living in a way that reflects our deepest values. We should be proud of the work we are doing, and we should be excited about the progress we are making. We are building a legacy, and we want it to be one of hope, progress, and humanity. As we conclude this part of our exploration, let us reflect on the power of our own agency. We are not helpless. We are not victims of our circumstances. We are architects of our own lives and our own society. We have the power to change the world, and we have the responsibility to use that power for the good of all. This is the ultimate lesson of the trolley problem. It is not about a machine, it is about us. It is about who we are and what we choose to do when the pressure is on. Let us commit to being a people who act with courage, with wisdom, and with a deep and abiding love for our fellow human beings. Let us commit to building a world where the greatest good is not just an ideal but a reality. This is the work of our lives, and it is work that matters. Together, we can make it happen. The concept of the restlessness of reason is perhaps the most important takeaway from our entire discussion. It is the idea that we can never truly rest on our laurels. We can never say, "I have solved the problem of morality and I am done." The moment we stop questioning, the moment we stop reflecting, is the moment we become stagnant. We must remain curious, we must remain critical, and we must remain engaged. This is the only way to keep our moral compass pointed in the right direction. It is a state of perpetual intellectual and moral motion, and it is the key to living a life that is both meaningful and impactful. We see this restlessness in the greatest thinkers throughout history. They were never satisfied with the answers they were given. They were always pushing, always challenging, and always looking for a deeper understanding. They understood that the search for truth is an ongoing process, not a final destination. We should follow their example. We should be willing to challenge the status quo, to question the accepted wisdom, and to look for new and better ways of understanding the world. This is the only way to prevent our society from falling into a state of decay. The risks of this restlessness are real. It can be unsettling, it can force us to confront things we would rather not think about, it can make us feel like we are always on shaky ground. But these risks are the price of admission for a truly vibrant and intelligent life. We cannot have growth without discomfort. We cannot have progress without change. We must embrace the challenges that come with our intellectual journey, and we must trust that they will lead us to a better place. Consider the impact of this mindset on our relationships with one another. If we are all committed to a process of questioning and reflecting, then we are more likely to be open to the perspectives of others. We are more likely to engage in productive dialogue, and we are more likely to find common ground. This is the key to building a society that is inclusive, tolerant, and collaborative. It is the foundation of a true democracy. We need to cultivate this spirit of inquiry in our schools, our workplaces, and our communities. The role of the humanities is critical in this context. Literature, history, art, and philosophy are the fields that help us understand what it means to be human. They help us explore the depths of our own experience, and they help us relate to the experiences of others. They are the sources of our collective wisdom, and they are the tools we use to build a more meaningful life. We must continue to invest in these areas, and we must ensure that they are accessible to everyone. They are not just extras, they are the foundation of our culture. We should also reflect on the importance of humility. We are all fallible, we are all capable of making mistakes, we are all prone to bias. By acknowledging this, we can become more open to the feedback of others. We can learn from our mistakes and we can adjust our course. Humility is the antidote to arrogance, and it is the key to effective collaboration. It allows us to work together, to share our ideas, and to build on each other's successes. The search for moral truth is a collective enterprise. We are not working in isolation. We are part of a long-standing conversation that has been going on for generations. We have the ability to contribute to this conversation, and we have the duty to leave it in a better state than we found it. We do this by sharing our insights, by engaging in debate, and by building on the work of those who came before us. This is the work of a community, and it is the work of a lifetime. We must also be prepared for the fact that we will not always reach a consensus. There will always be disagreements, and there will always be different ways of viewing the world. This is not a bad thing. It is a sign of a healthy society. It is the source of our diversity and the engine of our innovation. The goal is not to eliminate disagreement, but to manage it in a way that is respectful and constructive. We must learn how to disagree without being disagreeable, and how to find common ground even when we see the world differently. The final lesson of the trolley problem is that we are the ones who are in control of our destiny. We are the ones who define our values. We are the ones who build our institutions. We are the ones who create our future. This is a responsibility that we cannot delegate. It is a responsibility that we must accept with open arms. We have the potential to make a difference, and we have the obligation to use our time and our talents to create a better world. We must never forget the human beings at the center of our moral calculations. It is easy to get lost in the logic, the numbers, and the theories. It is easy to treat these problems as if they are just intellectual exercises. But at the end of the day, there are real lives at stake. There are real people who are suffering, and there are real people who are counting on us to do the right thing. We must never lose sight of this. Our moral reasoning must always be grounded in compassion and a deep respect for the individual. As we look toward the future, let us remain hopeful. We have seen how much progress we have made, and we know that more is possible. We have the tools, we have the knowledge, and we have the potential. The only thing we need is the courage to take the next step. Let us continue to ask the hard questions. Let us continue to push for a better way. Let us continue to work together toward a future that is marked by justice, by compassion, and by a deep and enduring commitment to the common good. The restlessness of reason is the fuel for our progress. It is what keeps us moving forward, what pushes us to be better, and what makes our search for a more just world so profoundly rewarding. We are on a journey together, and it is a journey that will take us to places we cannot yet imagine. Let us embrace the adventure, and let us be the architects of a future that we can all be proud of. This is the ultimate goal, and it is a goal that we can achieve if we only keep working together. We should be grateful for the opportunity to engage in this work. It is a privilege to be a part of such an important and ongoing conversation. It is a privilege to contribute to the collective wisdom of our time. Let us make the most of it. Let us bring our best selves to the table, and let us work with the energy, the passion, and the commitment that this task demands. The future is waiting for us, and we are ready to meet it. We must also be willing to share what we have learned. We should be mentors to those who come after us, and we should be learners from those who have more experience than us. We should be open to the wisdom of all ages, and we should be dedicated to passing that wisdom on. This is how we ensure that our progress continues. And this is how we ensure that our work remains relevant for generations to come. The journey of moral inquiry is never finished. It is a cycle of action, reflection, and learning. We act, we think about the consequences of our actions, we learn from our mistakes, and we use what we have learned to act better the next time. This is the process that defines us, and it is the process that allows us to grow. It is a beautiful and challenging process, and it is the essence of what it means to be a moral being. We should always remember that our work is not just for ourselves. It is for our families, for our communities, and for our world. It is for the generations that are yet to come. We are building a legacy of values and principles that will guide the future. This is a task of profound significance, and we must approach it with the gravity and the hope it deserves. In the end, our success will be measured by the world we leave behind. It will be measured by the quality of our relationships, the health of our society, and the degree of justice and compassion we have managed to create. This is the only measure that matters. We must strive to make it a measure that we can be proud of. We must strive to leave the world better than we found it. So let us stay restless. Let us stay curious. Let us stay committed to the search for truth and justice. Let us continue to engage with these difficult questions, and let us continue to work together to find the answers. The journey is long and the path is often unclear, but we are not walking it alone. We are walking it together, and that is what makes it possible to keep going. Thank you for your commitment to this important work. Thank you for your willingness to think, to question, and to act. You are a vital part of this collective effort, and your contribution is essential. Let us continue to strive, to grow, and to build a better future together. The work is just beginning, and the possibilities are endless. Let us make the most of this incredible journey.